to stimulus control, this next article is going to focus on how operant behavior is brought under control of antecedent stimuli. So, and focus primarily more on antecedents. So again, this might be a review for some, but others you may not know, but stimulus control is a target behavior that will be more likely to occur in the presence of the SD, or discriminative stimulus. Stimulus, yes, that's right, and signals reinforcers availability. So the article that I chose was some factors involved in stimulus control of operant behavior, and this was by Morris and Skinner. So this paper is experimental, meaning that has empirical data in it, and this is not basically what was required of us, but this paper is significant because I feel like it's very fundamental in understanding stimulus control, and it's something that you will revisit in your other classes in this program, and it focuses primarily on extinction, stimulus control, and how superstitious behavior is developed. So this is a very popular article, and I would recommend that you read it and revisit it as well. And it started to try to reaffirm the findings from Estes' previous study. So his study basically involved pigeons. So they had 2 pigeons that went into the box, and they were establishing schedules of reinforcement. So they had different variable intervals of reinforcement, and the pigeons were able to press the lever, and they would receive food basically for pressing the lever. But they were given free food in the next phase without pressing the lever. So they removed the lever and they were given free food, and they saw more responding, and the pigeons started to establish any type of behavior with receiving the food. So this is what we call that superstitious behavior, because it's kind of like that incidental responding that they felt as though that would still give them access to the reinforcer, which was food. So they wanted to reaffirm these findings in their study. Sorry, my camera's moving. Let me set it up again. So they wanted to reaffirm these findings in the Morris and Skinner study, and they did this with 4 pigeons, and the pigeons were placed in an experimental box, and they had 3 different stages. So in the first stage, I'll just get closer here, there was a variable interval schedule. So on an average of a minute, they would be given food in the presence of red and green lights alternating, regardless of their behavior. Then they got to stage 2. Stage 2 was where they received food in the pecking in presence of the white light. So they pressed the lever, basically they would receive food in presence of the white light. And this was a continuous reinforcement schedule. So meaning that every, like a FR1, which is every time they pressed it in the presence of the white light, they would basically get food. And this was up to 72 times. And then they had other pigeons where they had a variable interval schedule of average of 1 minute. They would still receive food if they pecked in the presence of the white light. Then you get to stage 3. Stage 3 is the same schedule as stage 1. Red and green lights alternated. They received free food in this stage, meaning that they would just get food presented to them, and they withheld food if they pressed the lever this time. So they weren't given food if they were pressing the lever, and they would just give them free food regardless of their behavior in that phase. So the findings from this study are as follows. So free food for incidental responding. So pigeons associated any behavior with receiving reinforcement, and that causes superstitious behavior, which is mentioned earlier. And then in Estes' finding, so that reaffirmed his finding. And then stage 3 was extinction because food was withheld for lever pressing, and they saw more rapid responding. So in stage 3, like we said before, they were not getting food if they did press the lever, so that's withholding the reinforcer. So that's what's called as extinction. And in that sense, they would respond faster, kind of like an extension burst, because they were trying to see what behavior they can engage in to basically receive the food. All right, so the assumption for this article, it relates to the 1992 article, is that behavior can be brought under control of antecedent stimuli. So, like I said previously, the discriminative stimuli, or SD, is an antecedent stimuli, and it signals the availability of the reinforcer. And we talked about stimulus control and how the behavior was more likely to occur in that presence of that SD. So lights in stage 2 signaled the reinforcer was available, and pigeons would peck to receive that food, which is an example of stimulus control. Stage 3 is when food was given, regardless of behavior they displayed. Their stimulus control was lost because they had incidental responding and started to be associated with receiving reinforcers. So meaning like they didn't understand the factor that you could just get the free food. Like it was just going to be given to them anyway. So that stimulus control was lost in that stage 3. And then it's important to establish, take away from this, it's important to establish stimulus control in order to avoid superstitious behavior, because you don't want people to associate, or even organisms to associate any type of responding with receiving the reinforcer. So that's very important.